Some pain does not begin in a single moment. It builds slowly. A little more pressure each day. A little more emotional exhaustion hidden behind normal routines. A little more silence covering thoughts you no longer know how to explain. And eventually, your heart becomes tired before life even gives you another difficult situation to carry. You wake up already feeling heavy inside. Your mind already feels overwhelmed before the day fully begins. Small things affect you more deeply than before. Not because you became weak, but because your soul has been carrying emotional weight for too long without real rest. And perhaps nobody around you fully notices it. People still see you functioning, still working, still answering messages, still trying to stay strong. But inside, something feels exhausted in ways words can barely describe anymore. You try to ignore it at first. You tell yourself to stay focused, to keep moving, to stop overthinking. But the pressure inside your heart keeps growing quietly underneath everything else. And eventually, silence becomes dangerous. Because the moment everything around you slows down, the emotions you buried during the day begin surfacing again. The fear returns. The thoughts become louder. The affliction starts speaking inside your chest in ways that are impossible to escape. This is where many people begin suffering silently. Not because they stopped believing in God, but because they kept carrying pain internally while pretending they were still emotionally okay. Tonight, something different is about to happen. Not because every problem instantly disappears, but because God never ignores an afflicted heart that cries out honestly before Him. He sees the exhaustion hidden behind your silence. He sees the pressure nobody else understands. He sees the emotional battles you stopped trying to explain because your soul became too tired to put them into words. And before this prayer ends, the same God who strengthened David in anguish, comforted Elijah in exhaustion, and brought peace to fearful hearts throughout Scripture, is about to meet you in the exact place where your heart feels most overwhelmed. Stay here, because the affliction inside you is about to encounter the presence of the only one who truly knows how to restore the human soul. Long before this moment, something inside you was already becoming exhausted. Not all at once. Quietly, a little more pressure every day, a little more emotional weight added to your thoughts, a little more fear hidden behind normal routines. And slowly, your heart began carrying things it never truly had time to recover from. From the outside, life continued normally. You kept moving. You kept answering people. You kept handling responsibilities and trying to stay emotionally strong. Most people around you probably assumed you were doing fine because you never stopped functioning. But internally, your soul was already becoming tired before this new pain ever appeared. That is what many people never understand about emotional affliction. Sometimes the heart does not break because of one single moment. Sometimes it becomes overwhelmed after carrying invisible pressure for too long without real peace, release, or rest. You begin noticing it in small ways at first. Your mind feels heavier in the morning. Your patience becomes shorter. Simple situations affect you emotionally more than they used to. Things that once felt manageable now seem overwhelming because your heart has been operating under constant pressure for too long. And eventually, exhaustion becomes your normal emotional state. You continue living, but internally you feel drained in ways sleep cannot fully fix. You continue trying to stay hopeful, but your thoughts feel crowded with worry, fear, and emotional tension. And perhaps the hardest part is this: you cannot even fully explain why your heart feels so heavy anymore. You just know something inside you has been tired for a long time. Tired of carrying emotional pressure silently. Tired of trying to stay strong for everyone. Tired of pretending everything is under control while your soul quietly struggles underneath it all. And then, when another painful situation finally appears, it does not simply hurt you emotionally. It pushes an already exhausted heart even closer to its limit. That is why some pain feels unbearable. Not because it arrived alone, but because your soul was already carrying more than anyone else realized. And maybe tonight, that is exactly where you are. Still functioning on the outside while internally feeling emotionally overwhelmed. Still trying to hold yourself together while something inside you feels close to collapsing underneath the weight. But God saw your exhaustion long before this pain appeared. He noticed the pressure hidden behind your silence. He understood the emotional fatigue you never fully explained to anyone else. He saw the moments where your heart quietly cried for rest, even while your life continued moving normally around you. Nothing inside you has ever been invisible to him. Throughout Scripture, God repeatedly met people whose hearts were already weary before the next battle arrived. Moses became emotionally exhausted carrying pressure for too long. David often cried out from a heart already worn down by fear and sorrow. Elijah reached moments where emotional fatigue became heavier than his ability to continue alone. God has always understood tired hearts, especially the ones that kept suffering silently while trying to remain strong. And tonight, the exhaustion you carried before this pain ever arrived is about to meet the presence of the one who knows how to restore what pressure has been draining inside you for far too long. Because what feels overwhelmed inside your heart right now is not beyond God's ability to heal. And what happens next may finally bring relief to the part of your soul that has been tired long before anyone else noticed. There was a time when silence felt peaceful. A quiet room used to help you breathe. Moments alone used to calm your thoughts. But now, something has changed. Silence no longer feels restful. It feels heavy. The moment everything around you becomes quiet, your mind immediately fills with thoughts you were trying to avoid during the day. Fear rises faster. Worries become louder. Emotions you managed to suppress while staying busy suddenly return all at once. And little by little, silence becomes the place where your affliction feels strongest. You try distracting yourself at first. You stay busy longer than necessary. You scroll through your phone. You keep noise around you because deep inside, part of you is afraid of what your thoughts will do once everything slows down again. But eventually, the silence always returns. And when it does, the emotional pressure inside your heart becomes impossible to ignore. You begin replaying situations repeatedly in your mind. Conversations return. Regret returns. Fear about tomorrow begins growing stronger in your thoughts. Your emotions become restless because your soul no longer knows how to fully relax underneath the weight it has been carrying. This is what affliction quietly does to the human heart. It transforms silence into emotional pressure. Instead of becoming a place of peace, quiet moments begin feeling like places where anxiety, overthinking, and fear gain more space to speak inside you. And perhaps the hardest part is that nobody else notices this internal battle. People assume you are resting when you are alone. But many nights your mind is fighting wars your mouth never speaks about. Wars against uncertainty, against emotional exhaustion, against the fear that something inside your life is falling apart while you desperately try to remain emotionally stable. And over time, even your own thoughts begin feeling unsafe. You want peace, but your mind keeps returning to fear. You want rest, but your heart feels emotionally alert all the time. You pray, but part of you still feels trapped underneath the affliction you cannot seem to silence completely. This is where many people quietly begin feeling hopeless. Not because they stopped loving God, but because affliction slowly trained their minds to expect fear instead of peace whenever silence arrived. But tonight something important is changing. Because God never intended for silence to become a prison for your thoughts. Throughout Scripture, God often spoke most deeply during quiet moments. Elijah heard his voice after the noise stopped. David found God repeatedly during lonely nights filled with fear and emotional anguish. Even Jesus withdrew into quiet places to reconnect with the Father when pressure around him became overwhelming. God has always entered silent places, not to increase fear, to restore peace. And tonight, the same silence that has been amplifying your affliction is about to become the place where God begins calming your heart differently, because His presence is stronger than the thoughts that have been tormenting you in the dark. And what happens next may finally bring rest to the part of your mind that has not felt emotionally safe in a very long time. At some point, pretending to be okay became part of your survival. You learned how to smile while your thoughts were heavy. You learned how to answer people normally while your heart was exhausted. You learned how to continue functioning even when something inside you felt close to breaking. And little by little, carrying pain silently became your normal way of living. Most people never noticed. They saw you continuing your routine. They saw you showing up, helping others, handling responsibilities, staying productive, staying present. But they never saw how much effort it took just to keep yourself emotionally together. That is the invisible struggle many afflicted hearts carry every single day. The battle of appearing strong while internally feeling overwhelmed. You tell yourself to stay composed, to not cry, to not fall apart, to keep pushing through because other people depend on you, because life keeps moving, because stopping feels impossible. But emotional pressure does not disappear simply because you hide it well. It keeps building quietly underneath everything. And eventually the soul begins reaching limits it can no longer ignore. You start feeling emotionally tired all the time. Small situations suddenly affect you more deeply than before. Your mind becomes overwhelmed faster because internally your heart has already been carrying too much weight for too long. And still, you continue trying to appear strong. Not because you enjoy suffering silently, because somewhere along the way, you began believing vulnerability was dangerous. So instead of releasing the pain, you carry it deeper inside yourself. You continue comforting others while secretly needing comfort yourself. You continue encouraging people while internally feeling emotionally drained. You continue acting stable while your thoughts quietly collapse underneath fear, pressure, and exhaustion. And perhaps tonight, this is exactly where your soul feels trapped. Tired of pretending, tired of carrying emotional pain invisibly, tired of trying to stay strong while your heart feels weaker every day underneath the pressure. But God never asked you to become emotionally indestructible. He never expected you to survive affliction without weakness. Throughout Scripture, some of the people closest to God reached moments where their emotional strength failed completely. David openly cried through anguish and fear. Jeremiah spoke honestly about inner sorrow and exhaustion. Elijah became so emotionally overwhelmed he no longer knew how to continue alone. God never rejected broken hearts. He moved closer to them. And perhaps this is the moment where your soul finally stops trying to survive through appearance alone. Because the pressure to look strong is exhausting when your heart is secretly falling apart underneath it all. And the moment you stop hiding that pain from God is often the exact moment healing begins entering places. Affliction has been destroying quietly for too long. You do not have to pretend in His presence. You do not have to force peace. You do not have to hide the exhaustion inside your heart anymore. Because tonight, God is reaching the exact place inside you where the invisible battle has been happening all along. And what happens next may finally bring relief to the soul that has been carrying this burden silently for far too long. There comes a moment when the heart can no longer keep everything buried inside. The pressure becomes too heavy. The thoughts become too loud. The emotional exhaustion reaches a point where pretending to be okay no longer works the way it used to. And that is where the cry begins. Not a rehearsed prayer, not polished words, not spiritual performance, just a soul that has finally reached its limit. You stop trying to sound strong before God. You stop pretending your faith feels steady while your heart is falling apart internally. You stop carrying pain silently because deep inside, you finally realize you cannot survive this affliction alone anymore. And in that moment, something honest rises from inside you. God, I need you. Sometimes that is the most powerful prayer a person can pray. Because heaven has always responded to honest desperation more than perfect words. Throughout Scripture, the people who encountered God most deeply were often the ones who reached Him completely exhausted emotionally. Blind Bartimaeus cried out because silence was no longer enough. Hannah poured out years of hidden anguish because her soul could no longer contain the pain quietly. David repeatedly cried from places of fear, weakness, and emotional collapse instead of pretending he was unaffected by what he felt inside. God has always moved toward afflicted hearts that stop hiding. And tonight, that is exactly what is happening inside you. The walls around your pain are beginning to break. The emotions you tried controlling are finally surfacing honestly before God. The tears you held back, the fear you buried, the exhaustion you minimized, everything is rising into His presence now. And instead of rejecting your weakness, He meets you there. That changes everything. Because the moment your soul stops pretending is often the exact moment healing begins entering the deepest places inside your heart. You feel it happening slowly. The pressure inside your chest begins loosening. The constant tension controlling your thoughts starts fading little by little. Your mind no longer feels forced to carry every burden alone. For the first time in a long time, your soul begins releasing what it was never created to hold by itself. This is what real surrender looks like. Not giving up. Letting God step into the place where your own strength finally ended. And perhaps tonight your affliction brought you here for this exact reason. Not to destroy you, but to bring your heart to the moment where dependence on God becomes real instead of distant. Because when the soul finally cries honestly before God, something sacred begins happening. The burden starts becoming lighter. Fear begins losing authority. The heart slowly starts breathing again. And right now, while your soul is opening completely before Him, God is already moving inside the deepest part of your pain. Because the cry born from your affliction tonight did not rise into silence. Heaven heard it, and what happens next is about to bring peace into the exact place where your heart has been hurting most. Something began changing tonight before your situation even changed. The pain may still exist. Certain questions may still remain unanswered. The future may still feel uncertain in some ways, but deep inside your heart, something no longer feels the same. Because while you were pouring out your affliction before God, His presence quietly entered the exact place where your soul had been hurting most. And suddenly, the weight inside your chest no longer feels impossible to carry. Not because you became emotionally stronger overnight, because God began carrying what was crushing you internally. This is how His peace often arrives. Not through loud moments, not through instant answers, but through His presence touching the exhausted parts of the soul while the tears are still falling. And perhaps this is what makes this moment so powerful. The affliction did not disappear first. The peace arrived first. You begin noticing it slowly. Your breathing becomes calmer. The thoughts that once felt uncontrollable no longer dominate your mind the same way. The emotional pressure inside your heart starts loosening because your soul finally feels safe enough to stop fighting alone. And for the first time in a very long time, silence no longer feels terrifying. Because now God's presence is filling the place where fear had been living inside you. This is the peace Scripture describes as surpassing understanding. Not because life suddenly makes perfect sense, but because God's presence becomes stronger than the affliction trying to overwhelm the heart. Tonight, while nobody else fully saw your internal battle, God saw every hidden moment, every fearful thought, every silent tear, every exhausted prayer your soul barely had strength to whisper. None of it was invisible to Him. And the same God who comforted broken hearts throughout Scripture has entered your pain tonight with that same compassion and care. David experienced this peace in the middle of anguish. Paul wrote about peace while carrying suffering and pressure. Jesus Himself looked at fearful hearts and repeatedly said, "Do not be afraid," because God has never needed perfect circumstances to begin restoring a human soul. He only needs a heart willing to open honestly before Him. And tonight, your heart did exactly that. Now something inside you is finally beginning to rest again. Not because every battle ended, but because you are no longer carrying those battles by yourself. This night will not only be remembered as the night you cried out to God, it will become the night where His presence reached the deepest place of your affliction and began restoring what fear, exhaustion, and emotional pain had been draining for far too long. And as this prayer comes to an end, let this truth remain deeply inside your soul. God touched the place inside your heart that nobody else could heal. And even before your situation changes completely, your soul is already beginning to find peace again.